Hello to all of our viewers. Good morning to those in the Far East, and good evening to those here in downtown Great Barrington, Massachusetts. What's so fucking funny, Rafa? I'm just trying out a couple of different openings.
Downtown
Great.
I thought it was
a
beautiful night. A really beautiful night in Great.
We don't have any people in the Far East.
I don't know.
We got to pump the ad spend.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. Let's.
Yeah. Our little
Dream big.
What is it? Let your light shine. This little light of mine, Josh. Just let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine.
I mean, LeBron made it big out there.
Yeah.
You never know. Okay, well, welcome back. Welcome back to the Bunch podcast here, recording live on a beautiful, absolutely fucking beautiful Wednesday evening here. Temperature has finally broken. We got down, I think we're sitting at like 72 degrees right now with like cool breeze.
Beautiful sky.
Yeah, blue sky. A little bit of rain we got the other day, went ahead and made everything a little bit greener. And as I was walking around the golf course today, I was like, this is quintessential Berkshire season. Like, we are in it.
Yeah.
So let's take note of that
Yeah.
for the next couple of days and continue to enjoy it, because I feel like last summer we just like rolled through like a wet summer, and then it was winter, and we like never got to like have those perfect days where you're like, God.
We did. We had beautiful days in the beginning of this summer.
This
there was
summer.
some cool.
But like last summer, it was
we've
like
just
being
been hit with the heat.
The last month, though, has been just hot and dry.
Hot and dry.
Yeah.
Hot and dry. Poor farmers.
Yeah.
Quick shout out to the farmers who are going through all kinds of irrigation issues, sprinklers. For those that don't follow Max Morningstar on Instagram, if you want to see some comedy in farming and let's get Max on the show, because he's fucking hilarious and he works really hard, and we'd love to do that. But tonight, welcoming to the podcast, we have Terry and Terri visiting in the house, some of the coolest motherfuckers on the block.
So you just answered my question. Apparently, we can swear. This is like
We talked about it a lot in the beginning. I don't think any of our sponsors are going to be like, child focused, and it is a hospitality podcast of sorts. And I don't know if I have the filter to it'll happen. But we have Terry and Terri here visiting us from the Granville House, one of the greatest new additions to our community.
Oh, man, thank you.
So happy to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. We are thrilled to be here.
Good.
I literally, when I was watching and seeing the podcast on Instagram, and I was like, damn, how do I get onto this? And I literally was like ready to corner you and be like, hey,
So what's up with that?
what do I got to do to get on this podcast? And then when I got the call, I was like, yes.
Didn't even have to ask.
So thank you. We're honored.
Yeah, so great to have you guys here. So I've got so many questions to ask, and a lot of topics I want to get into. But to start us off, please tell our viewers. I mean, so many of us that are local don't even really know. I mean, I mention all the time, I'm like, oh, Terry and Terri from the Granville. They're like, what's that? And I'm like, 41 North Plain Road and Division. Right?
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, I've read articles. I've seen great press. I've heard good things, but like they don't really know that it exists because we all have houses. Well, that's a topic for another day, that a lot of us don't have houses. But tell us about your operation, what brought you here to the Berkshires, and what it is that you two do so very well.
That's you, hon.
I'll start. So we opened a little over 2 years ago, July 1, 2020, right in the middle of a pandemic. And we have always had a dream of opening up a bed and breakfast. And on our very first date, we both worked at Gramercy Tavern in New York City. And
It's where we learn to do everything we do.
Yes. But we worked together for a number of months, probably about 6-9 months, until I worked up the courage to ask Terry on my first date. I said on that first date, we went to Tabla, and I said, what is your dream in life? And she said, one day I want to run a bed and breakfast. And I immediately, that thought had never in a million years crossed my brain.
Such
and
a
I
guy
immediately
moment.
blurted out, oh my God, that's exactly what I want to do, because I was
we're meant
just
for each other.
madly in love. And you know, I like to joke that
It
if she
worked.
said I wanted to one day open a circus, I would have immediately taken juggling lessons and fucking put on clown makeup and be like, me too. But we. You know, from our first date, this was a goal, and then it kind of went away for a little while, and then came back, and then when it finally came back, we said it's time to do this, and we knew we always wanted it to be in Great Barrington, which hopefully at some point we'll get more in detail with, but we love this area, and once we made the decision to pull the trigger, we did so, and we wanted to be in this area, and we made the decision pre-COVID, and then we're under renovations and whatnot, and making the transition, and then about a week and a half before we were complete with our construction, the world shut down with COVID, but. Thank God we had the most amazing contractor who is a
Shout
dear
out to
friend of
Shimmy.
yours. Shout out Shimmy.
Shout out Shimmy.
Shout out Shimmy, and I'm just going to call it out because I did my homework on the podcast, and I watched, and I heard you say if anyone mentions the hat, they get invited to the party to be able to drink from the hat. So I'm calling it. I'm invited to that party. A gift from Shimmy, which is such a Shimmy gift,
I mentioned it
by
before
the
we were
way.
on the podcast.
It's
so.
amazing. But no, Shimmy's the best. And we had a week and a half remaining of construction when the world shut down, and that was Shimmy with a team of like 7 guys. And he said, look, I'm going to do a Shimmy impression right now. I got to send my guys home. But, you know, if you give us full access to the house, with maybe 1 or 2 more guys, can probably, finish the work, not in 1.5 weeks, but, probably, I think maybe 6 weeks. And
He was so
he
spot
was
on.
fucking awesome.
That's
Because,
very good.
yeah, not bad, right?
That's very good.
I hope he listens to this. You need to get him on this.
We will. We
You
will.
know.
He's in Israel right now.
Yeah.
Little
But Shimmy finished it in about 6 weeks, and with him and like 1 or 2 more guys, very carefully. And but anyway, long story short, to answer your question, we ended up finishing open in 2020, and we are July of 2020, and we are a small 5 guest room bed and breakfast here in Great Barrington, and couldn't be more excited to be doing what we're doing.
Now, I got the pleasure of staying with you both for a night and getting the full treatment.
And
which
what a
was,
night it was for you.
It was so much fun. I don't even remember what. I think it was it our anniversary or Emily's birthday last summer or 2 summers ago, whenever it was.
Yeah.
But I think somebody just told me. Actually, it was a customer, right? Oftentimes, my servers come up to me and they're like, yo, you got to go talk to table 20. Like, they're cool as shit. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I pull up a chair and start chatting with them. And I'm like, where are you guys coming from? Oh, here in New York. Where are you staying? Oh, we're staying at the Granville House. I'm like, what's that? And they're like, oh, you don't know about the Granville House? And I'm like, no. Oh, my gosh.
You
like,
called us like,
tell
I
more.
should
I'm
know
like,
you.
shots. And they're like, you need to, like, this is the only place we stay. We love it. It's amazing. Like, it's so cool. You got to go check it out. And sure enough, that night, I remember sitting at the bar with my laptop, taking a look at it. And then I think I like called and left a voicemail.
You did,
Yeah.
and I called you right back.
Called me right back. And it was like,
Yeah.
hey, we've been meaning to like chat. And I'm like, hey.
We need to know each other.
Yeah. And you're like, well, come on down. Like, let's do it. And sure enough, we showed up. And I think it was, I give credit to you guys because you guys have like breathed the life into it and given it such a personality. And Shimmy did such an amazing job of like, of giving you the bones, behind it. And even though he told you the color wasn't right, and then you vetoed his decision,
wrong.
and he was wrong, and he was so glad that he was wrong. But what a great combination to walk in there and just parking the car and immediately feeling like I'm somewhere special and I'm not going anywhere tonight.
Thank you. We have, when we show our guests around, often I'm saying there is a lot of space to just do nothing. And coming to the Berkshires, there's so much you can do or not do. And I think getting away is so much of getting away is just that, just stopping. And something that I think we were really, so grateful to the house itself for having the space and the areas to present spaces for a moment, whatever that may be, whether it's the rocking chair on the porch or the hammock out back or the Adirondack chair by the river. It's a space where you have your moment of relaxed, released, whatever that may be. And we're not the kind of people who go on vacation and do lots of things. We do some things, and we do lots of nothing to just, be. It just feels good to be the caretakers of this space, to live in it happily and enjoy it as our space, and see guests enjoying the space and having their relaxed moments.
And you even gave me an ability to take that moment of home with me, in that you guys have a music room downstairs, yes, which is filled with records, and every single room has a little record player in it. And that was the coolest thing, and I'm sure everybody thinks it's the coolest thing to like go downstairs and check out some records, bring it up to your room and play. And that night, I immediately ordered a record player from Amazon.
That's awesome.
And I never would have like put two and two together, like, oh, if I buy a record player and a couple of records, I can find peace for a couple of moments and like have a happy place. But it's only because when I open up that little record player suitcase and play a record, it actually takes me back to the Granville House in memory, not a song or this or that. It's specific to like only 10 minutes away. There's a place where I was calm, happy, and completely fulfilled. And I'm going to take a moment to appreciate that, even in my own home or kitchen or dish pit. Sometimes nights get really rough, and I'm like, get me the fucking jukebox.
That's so nice.
My Zen moment. That's beautiful. Thank you.
For us, it was interesting because we knew there's a lot of decisions you have to make when you open up a lodging establishment. What's your kid policy? What's your dog policy? What's your TV policy? Yeah. And we knew we did not want to have TVs in the rooms.
I was very conscious.
Very conscious of that. And for the most part, I think most guests have totally vibed with that. Occasionally you have someone that's like,
around the Super Bowl.
What do you mean there's not a TV? Yeah, usually it's on Super Bowl Sunday. But I said, well, I don't want to have TVs. I want to have I've collected vinyl for, 10 years or so. And I said, let's put record players in each room, and we'll just put my vinyl collection out in this. There was this little tiny room
like
right off of, it was like a powder room.
Yeah. Like, what do you do with that tiny room? It's like,
and so we said, well, let's make that the record room. And so we put, these record players in the room. And what I love about it is, in this day and age with technology, you could name a song right now, and within 10 seconds, I could pull it up on my phone and we could play it. We have instant access to everything. But there's something about the process of, and the enjoyment of, and granted, these record players that we have in the rooms, they're not super high fidelity. They're not great sound. It's not that pure, but there's something about the process. And I'm so glad that you shared that with us, because I would say there's been probably at least a dozen or 15 guests that have said that same thing, that they said, I had so much fun listening to records that I went out and bought a record player.
I wonder how many record players
I love that. But there's some a guest. I'll share this story that one guest shared with me once, which was he also was totally digging on the record player, and we got into this whole conversation about it, and the idea that it's more about the process than the finished product. And he compared it to his ritual every morning with coffee. So obviously coffee comes in many different shapes and forms. You have Keurig makers where you just push a button and it comes. You have a Mac, the Mr. Coffee machine where you put it, you scoop it, and you boom. But he had he was a Chemex purist. And every morning he said, I grind my beans, and I have a Chemex machine. I heat my water and I pour it over. And most people think I'm insane because it takes like 20 minutes for me to get my cup of coffee. But
It's a ceremony.
I get so much joy out of that process. And the finished product is really good as well. But it's not so much just about the finished product, but it's about the process of getting there. And I kind of equate that to the records, because there's something about taking a vinyl record out of the sleeve and putting it on and reading the liner notes and putting that needle on that's an enjoyable process. And
There's
not
so much
just
more
the finished
intention,
product.
too.
Yeah.
There's mindfulness, intention, you're slower. These are things that people are talking about. Like, you
Yeah.
go to your retreats to gain, like, and we're so aware that the world is moving so damn fast and everything's coming at us. Just, we have, like you said, instant access to anything, anywhere, all the time. And just stopping sometimes, it's like coming back to your breath. It's just coming back to something slower and taking a moment.
Yeah.
I had a friend in high school, shout out to Johnny Cunin, how you doing, DJ Scare Bear, who we're going to have him on the podcast
Great
soon.
DJ name, by the way.
Up to.
Scare Bear,
Scare
yeah.
Scare Bear.
That's good. DJ Scare Bear.
It's an old Care Bears reference you may be too young for.
And I was always a very fast-paced person. Like, I rode my bike or I rode my skateboard to the subway, even though it was only a block away, just to get there faster. And I like down the stairs, and I had to get to the right door so that I could be at the right spot to get into the train, so that once I got off, I was right at the stairs. And then I'm every 3 stairs getting out of there and huffing through. And Johnny didn't go at that speed. And he taught me such a valuable lesson, like junior and senior year, when we would hang out or walk the streets together, and he would just be like, slow down, man. Slow down. You got somewhere to be? And it was like, it felt like I did, but I think that was just like the wind in my back being like, go faster, go faster, go faster. Yeah. And so I would intentionally from time to time, even without Johnny, and I still do it to this day, and I think about him. I think about you every time I slow down, man. I just think like, sometimes I even do the math in my head to back it up, where I'm like, okay, instead of driving a little bit too fast today, what if you only went the speed limit? Like, slow down.
Yeah.
Take a look. Not so much when you're driving, but walking, whether it's in the city or here or on a bike or whatever it is that you're doing, taking that breath and knowing, like, it's all good.
You're here.
You're here.
Now.
Yeah. And so...
Be here now.
Be here, exactly. So I just want that long loop of records as they continue to spin round and round. But I think that is a practice that everybody should have, close to them, and finding ways to keep that tempo in such a high-paced world. So, DJ Scare Bear, appreciate you, my man.
Here's to you, DJ Scare Bear.
Here's to DJ Scare Bear. So, when you decided to open this B&B, what kind of sparked the decision, like, now's the time to do it? Was it the property itself, or was it the time in your lives?
So it was the time in our lives. We had, so the first date that Terry talked about, we had a 20th anniversary of that first date. Normally not celebrating first date anniversaries, but we went up and actually stayed at the Inn at Kenmore Hall, another phenomenal place up here. And we just stayed there one night. I had a beautiful time, just a lovely evening. And as soon as we went back, I started Googling linen sheets, because I slept in linen sheets for the first time, and they were phenomenal. And I found Brooklinen, and I bought some Brooklinen sheets, and we kept talking. We're like, remember when we used to want to do this? I was like, yeah. That Monday, I was like, well, maybe when the kids are out of school. Well, by Wednesday, I was like, well, why are we waiting for the kids to get out of school? By Saturday, literally, we came up and we looked at one property, that property. We were there for 2 hours on our first visit. And we came back the next day and made an offer. 4 weeks after the whole thing, 4 weeks after that one night of staying in at Kenmore Hall and having zero intention of rekindling this dream that was, shelved. He had good insurance. He had a good job. I was living in Jersey. The kids were growing. Everything's fine. Everything's great. We went just belly up, just turned it around. And he gave notice of 23 years of work, and we put an offer on a house that we said, what the heck are we doing? But it was, sometimes the universe speaks to you.
Totally.
And when you hear it and you know it's right and you take action on it, it works.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what happened.
It seemed like a very reckless decision. And
It felt so
at
right.
the time, I mean, I'm not a reckless person. I worked for Union Square Hospitality Group for 23 years. So I'm not a person that bops around a lot. I'm very like, stay the course. Don't jump around. And this dream of ours had been, as I mentioned before, it had been shelved for a while because you, at a certain point, you know, you make these ideas, these dreams when you're a kid, and then all of a sudden reality starts setting in, and you're responsible, and then you have kids and mortgages and you get promotions, and life feels really good, and then you go, well, maybe we're gonna stay. Maybe we won't go that path anymore. Maybe we'll try this new path, and it at a certain point, I think we put that B&B dream on a shelf, and it was do not resuscitate. But the truth of the matter is, and I'll say this, with no hesitation, I loved my time working with Danny and Union Square Hospitality Group, every moment of it. But at a certain point, you reach a level where it's wonderful because you get lots of great promotions and titles, and they pay you more money than you thought you could ever get.
You started as a waiter.
Yeah, when you started as a waiter and you're just hacking away, paycheck to paycheck.
White linen cloth to white linen cloth.
Yeah, right? And all of a sudden you're like, wow, I could do this for the rest of my life. And I loved it. But to be honest, the last handful of years, I often find, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but the higher you get up in your position, in your role, sometimes the more removed you become from the things that you loved to do. Mm-hmm. In my last few years with the company, I was overseeing 6 different businesses, and you can't be in 6 places at one time. And so suddenly you were working in restaurants, and now you're really working
meetings
in meetings
and HR and lawyers.
And you're dealing with a lot of nonsense. And there's that old term of like, that's why they pay you the big bucks. You deal with the shit. You deal with the HR issues, and you put in the fires out. And it becomes to the point where you're like, what am I doing? Mm-hmm. I'm not loving what I love doing anymore. And so, it was this perfect like collision of that moment of me feeling very questioning, wow, do I really have this in me to finish the race doing this? And then we went and stayed, for that anniversary. And I'll preface this by saying, I think Frank and Scott are tired of us telling this story because they're like, all right, you guys have gone on record many times. So if they're listening, this will be the last time we speak of this.
It's now public, and anytime you want to tell it, you can just revert it back to episode.
But I adore them, and they've become friends. But it was a weird thing because we showed up that day having zero. Like the idea of us being B&B owners was so shelved, and it literally just jostled that memory. And we sat there that night going, God, remember when we used to want to do this? And to the point where, like Terry just said, from that night, 4 weeks later,
it didn't stop.
4 weeks later, we made an offer at 98 Division Street, and I quit my job of 22 years at the time. It was that fast and furious, and I literally was so conscious because I thought, oh man, these guys are going to totally think that we were there on like a spy mission, just like taking B&B notes.
We did steal things from them. Not physical things. We stole ideas.
We stole a
things.
handful of ideas, but they're best in class.
They're very kind.
So even on our best day, we can't compete with them. But I remember I sent an email to Scott saying, I swear to God, we had zero intention of doing this, and thank you because you inspired us so much.
Yeah.
What's the age-old saying? Imitation is the greatest form of flattery, and
go.
I think that is a great example of that. You guys were inspired. You guys
inspired,
and it wasn't like that was the first time the idea came up, but it really brought you to a.
It helped us remember something that lean into something that you felt very passionately, but you didn't have. We didn't have the money. We didn't have the know-how. It was just an idea when we were young and inspired. Yeah. And then we had the money and we had the know-how. And we're like, oh, we can actually do this now. Yeah. And we figured... And then people have asked, is it all you thought? Is it more? Is it less? I don't know what it's like to have a real job anymore. I haven't had a real job in a long time. When our second child was born and she's now 13, I stopped working. So leaving my home and commuting and going to a job and punching in, punching out has stopped, 13 years ago.
And the real work began.
Yeah, and the real work began.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
But what I mean is that division of, now I'm here and now I'm there, home and work. Right. So when we started talking about this, I was like, well, I make beds and I clean toilets and I do laundry on a daily basis and I cook. So it's just for more people, right? Yeah. So what's the big deal? And I had no idea, what we were getting into. But all of this to say, I have never felt more me. I haven't felt more me in years. This space, not just the space that we're in and we're working in, but the community that we live in, the area that we live in, the roads I drive on to run my errands. Oh my God, I'm so lucky. This is my work. Yeah. One day, we're cleaning rooms, and it's us, Terry and I. There's no staff.
Yeah, we do it all.
Which, thank God, in this staffing crisis right now, that we don't have to hire employees. But he comes downstairs, and he goes, I've told this story before. He goes, I live in a mansion that I otherwise could not afford. And strangers come and sleep in my mansion, and I cook them breakfast, and they pay me money, and I clean up after them. And because of this, I don't have to get a real job. And I said, yep,
that's my life.
This is our life.
That's one way
and
of
we
putting
see
it.
our children every day. And the work, where I was going with that punch in, punch out, the work is never done.
No.
And your day is never over.
No.
But you're off and on throughout your time. That work-life balance exists. There's no there's breakfast service. There's certain cleaning time. There's certain times of things, but there's a flow between with my dog or my kids or my in my house and work life that's so beautiful.
Do you feel like your work-life balance is where you want it to be right now? What are you, 3 years in? Two,
a little over two.
A little over two. So 2 years in is typically a good benchmark to be like, all right, let's evaluate where we're at.
Well, I would say this. I mean, it's as Terry just mentioned, it's just us. We do all the cooking, check-ins, flips, room cleaning, beds, bath. It's just us. And it's funny because sometimes that's like an inconceivable thing. Like we last weekend we had Will Gadara and Christina Tosi came over for dinner, and we were talking, and they're like, you do the cleaning? You do it all? And that was inconceivable to them. They're like, what are you talking about?
You run a business, right? Yeah. You have employees, right?
I'm like, yeah, not everyone's Will Gadara, buddy. Some of us actually fucking roll up our sleeves and do the work,
I mop my own kitchen.
Yeah, not all of us have Milk Bar money. Shout out Milk Bar if you're listening, and Will. the way I look at it is I'm 51 years old. I'll be 52 in November. I still feel very able-bodied, and I can do the work. So I'd rather roll up my sleeves and do it, and then
make the business
and save the money,
save the
and
money,
and
put it back into the
put it
house.
back into it, and build up our retirement, and then because usually in a B&B you do it like in this sort of twilight of your life until whatever, and we'll probably finish this until we retire. And so, but at a certain point, I would like to hand the bed making and vacuuming over to someone else. I love cooking. It's funny because I spent my entire life in restaurants, but I never cooked. But I always was that guy that would like pick the brains of chefs and be like, hey, what are you doing there? And then I would go home and try it and fuck it up 5 times. And then on the 6th time, it would be like good enough. Yeah. And I was like, yeah.
Hey, Terry, you want to come over for dinner? I'm making this galette.
But I've always loved, working at Maialino, I was like, cacio e pepe, that looks really easy. I could do that. It's black pepper, cheese, and pot. And
how hard could that be?
Oh, very hard if you don't know what the hell you're doing. And so anyway, I'm the breakfast cook, and I think secretly I always wanted to be like a short order breakfast cook because I fucking love it. But it's so I think I'll always want to do that.
Yeah.
But I could one day I'll want to do.
One of these days,
do away
we'll
with
hand
making
over the
beds.
housekeeping. Yeah,
But for now, to answer your question, right now it's totally manageable because here's the thing that I've used this analogy before, and I've noticed a theme in the podcast that I've watched here so far about farming. I'm not a farmer, but I will say this. I like to joke that I live the life of a farmer now because...
Careful, you're in the Berkshires.
I know. But what I mean by that is my old job was so stressful. There was so much heavy stress nonsense that I would deal with. And I would get to the end of my week and it would just be like overwhelming. And you remember, I would take when we would take my days off.
Yeah.
It would take me a full day,
and there were no
to
days off.
decompress from the stress that I was dealing with. And then you have maybe a day of non-stress, and then you start getting like those Sunday scaries again, where you're like stressed of what are you gonna walk into on Monday, and that was my world for a long time. And I will say this. Now there's zero stress in making beds or, I wake up early every morning and I cook bacon and I bake muffins and I do breakfast service. And then I flip rooms and make beds and do this and that. And I vacuum, and it's physically taxing, but there's zero stress involved with that. And then at night, I sleep like a baby. So that's what I mean about the life of a farmer, and that it's a lot of physical work, because it's 7 days a week. Yeah. There's no days off when you're running a bed and breakfast, especially now in the midst of August. It's just 7 days a week, full house.
I don't know what day it is sometimes.
Yeah.
Every
day is Saturday now. But it's great because a farmer term, make hay while the sun shines, right?
That's right.
And so from that point of view, but I just I love it because it doesn't stress me out. So I can handle the physical work because that's no problem. But it's not having that mental stress that constantly weighs on you that is I am relieved to not deal with.
I want to talk about service for a little bit because service was something that kind of came second for me when I opened Cantina. I had never really been a server. I just started coming up in the cook's world, and so my focus was food and atmosphere, because I like the vibes and whatnot. But it wasn't really until year 2 that I was like, okay, there's work to be done here, and there's a lot of room for growth. Not that we had maxed out the kitchen. We thought we were putting out the best food ever, and now we had to make the front of house better. But I think that it's something that is oftentimes written off, and I'm very curious from both of you that have worked at some of the very best places in hospitality, right? Your last boss literally wrote the book
Literally wrote the book
on hospitality. And I think that that's something that, you know, when I met both of you, I read Danny's book, and I remember it kind of like revolutionized my front of house experience, and I made everybody else read it, and it made everything click. You know, things that you saw that you were like, that makes sense. He put it into words and was like, oh, that's why it worked. Yeah, duh.
Yeah.
Like, why didn't I say it that way? Obviously. Yeah. And when I met you guys, you embodied everything about that book, right? Like, you are 51%ers. Like, there's an aura about you that gravitates people towards you, that makes people feel comfortable. And I'm just curious for you guys to touch a bit on what that was like, both working there and what that's like, and what you've kind of taken from that, and what life lessons and what things kind of resonate with you years later, after having, you know, that experience at so many of these amazing restaurants with Danny and Mark and the whole crew.
So much there. I'll start.
Yeah, please.
I remember when I was at Gramercy, and they were talking about us being our rating in the Zagat, which was always either 1 or 2, back and forth with Union Square Cafe, Danny's other restaurant at the time, for favorite restaurant. And I remember him saying once, we didn't get voted best food. It wasn't even best service. It was just that it was their favorite. It was a je ne sais quoi. And it's how you feel when you're there. How do you feel? Mm-hmm. Any place you go, any restaurant, a Waffle House, a McDonald's, the finest restaurant in the world, if you feel good when you're there, your experience is better. No matter where you are, it's how you feel. And it's, earlier I talked about creating spaces for people to have their moments. So there's a chair, there's a table, there's a beautiful setting. Here is a studio set for your movie moment to happen. What happens there is up to you. How do you feel when you're there? What is this space making you, feel to engage you? And I think that the biggest thing of the 51% of Danny Meyer is being able to empathize with other people, being able to relate to other people, and embrace people and bring people into your space and say, you are welcome here. I want you to have a great time. It's just like if you don't have hospitality in you, you will not care about how another person is having an experience. That's the 51%. You can learn how to serve a drink. You can learn how to take an order. If you care about what this person is experiencing, you're a 51%er.
Yeah, I call it awareness all the time.
Yeah. I want people to have a great time.
Yeah. We
so want people, when they come to our home, when they come to Granville House, to have the best experience. If it's one night, 5, I want people to come in and go, oh, this feels so good. And it looks good or whatever. It tastes good. There's just something about it that it just feels good, because that's all life is. Moments, good moments strung together in a big long line, of feeling good. And I don't know how to make people care, but when you do, you get it. And Danny gets it, and I drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that 100%, and I would just say, we were very fortunate because we started in the company when it was just 2 restaurants. It was just Union Square Cafe and Gramercy Tavern, and I mean, it obviously has gone on so much bigger, and then not even considering Shake Shack, which is otherworldly. But you know, I feel very fortunate to have been there when we were at Gramercy Tavern. Danny had an office in the basement of Gramercy Tavern and was
Tom's
there
office was there.
and Tom Colicchio's office was right next door, and we were there, and he was there every day, and it was so there's that moment where you say, I knew them when. But also, I will say this about Danny. He is who he is, and he is just genuinely himself. And I remember, there was a point where, I was just a youngling starting as a waiter, and I was like, oh, whatever, And then, you get higher up, and I remember, like, towards the last few years that I was there, you start, you get more confident and cocky and whatnot. And there's a moment that I remember about Danny that I like to share, which is even at that level. I mean, and this was, Shake Shack was a publicly traded company, and he was uber successful. And you get, I noticed another through line of some of these podcasts that I've watched are reviews, Yelp reviews and whatnot.
Oh, we're going to get to that soon.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I've got a doozy
I need
to
your
share.
opinion.
Yeah, but I remember, there were times where we would get someone would write a complaint, and like you would read it, and like I'd sit down with him, and if I'm being really blunt, like you're like, this person is out of their fucking mind. This is ridiculous. And he always, no matter what, would say, what can we learn from this? Yeah. And I'd say, well, we can learn from this. Is this person's just out of control? They're ridiculous. And he would say, no, there's got to be something we can learn from this. So like, I was like Anakin Skywalker being like, fuck this person. And he was like Obi-Wan, like, Zen, just be cool. What can we learn from this? Use the Force. And I was like, damn. And even at that level, like where, he's worth like, hundreds of millions of dollars, and he could honestly just be like, this person's an asshole. Yeah. He never did. No. He never did. He was always, his position on it was always, any feedback, there's something we can learn from. Even if you, Terry, if you think this person is out of line, let's just invest in the time to say, is there some nugget that we can get better and learn something from? And I always admired that about him.
Yeah, my feeling has always been, if somebody has a bad time, to a certain extent, that's valid, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's in their own reality, their own stratospheres, even if they were having a bad day, if something made somebody feel like they weren't having a good time, if our goal at the restaurant is for everybody to be happy, to find their happy place, to enjoy what they're having, it doesn't need to be the best meal. It doesn't need to be the best dish you've ever had. It doesn't need to be the best cocktail or the best. But if you're enjoying yourself, then we're doing our job well. And I always said to the staff the same exact thing, which is like, if somebody walks out of there, we need to accept that as valid, because that is their perception of it.
Yes.
And I take the same standpoint of like, read between the lines and figure it out. Because if we can figure out how to make that person's experience better, everybody else is a lot easier.
Oh, yeah.
The challenging ones are actually the ones.
That's where you learn.
Yeah, that's where you learn. And even if somebody comes in, they're a challenging customer, right? And then we see them on the book and we're doing precepts and we're like, oh gosh, like so-and-so is in tonight. It's like, let's band together as a team and let's make sure they have the best night of their life tonight. Yeah. Why would we do that, chef? Like, come on, like they suck and they never tip well and like they always like complain and make all kinds of crazy requests, and then you do it. I don't know why you keep doing these requests for them, and yet they complain anymore. So let's just do it again. Let's do it again and see what happens.
There's my mom always said to kill them with kindness. You know? Kill them with kindness was a way, but there's something in. human beings want to be seen and heard and validated. All of us. We're here, just see me. And there are times that, to use one of Danny's things, people all have signs. And we would say, like, read their sign. What does their sign tell? What does their sign say to you? And if we are able to read another person's sign and let our own ego out, and it's not us, it's not personal, and say, what does this person need? Where can I meet them? And, when people feel seen, when people feel you read my sign, you saw me, and were kind, or I came at you and you disarmed that, and I'm human and you're human and we're connecting. It's so powerful. It's so powerful to just allow people to be connected. And sometimes it's those, as you would used to say, a difficult guest or something that is just someone who's really wanting to be seen, needing to be heard in a different way.
Yeah. That makes me think, as you, Terry, were saying, as you kind of go up the ladder, you start to lose the connection to what made you fall in love in the first place.
Yeah.
And for me, it has always been the people. It was never the food. It was always the people. And recently, because I have not been in the restaurant so often, when I am in there, I'm usually doing something quickly and then moving on. And I've had a number of guests that are regulars from the past shed a lot of disappointment and like frustration with me of like, why aren't you coming over and saying hi to us?
Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah.
Like, why aren't you sitting with us and having a drink? And I'm like, well, I just dipped in to give them this extra bag of towels and dinner's on the table at home.
Yeah.
But, and part of me's been in that, like, just keep moving. Like, somebody else is going to give them that attention. They're going to get it from somebody else. And my staff has done an amazing job of trying to embody that same spirit of you got hugged and kissed by Josh and Emily on the way in and on the way out.
Yeah.
But recently, it was a taco night, which is fast casual. So people sit, they grab their table, and then usually one person waits at the table, the others go up and get drinks and food. And a woman was sitting there by herself. This is a regular that I probably had one or two of these interactions with, where it was like, why aren't you, you're always with us. Why aren't you here? And I saw her sitting by herself, and I felt it, this need. And I went over there, I grabbed her shoulders, and I gave her a kiss on the cheek. And she turned and she said, "How did you know?"
Oh.
How did you know? And she smiled and she started to tear. And it was so clear in that moment. And that is something, now that we're surfacing this conversation, it makes so much more sense in my head. And that's why I love talking with people that like have the same goggles that I have, because as we're discussing this now, I do need to recognize that part of the book, that part of the culture is knowing when the right time is. Yeah. And that was the most important thing to do in that moment. Not getting that bottle of wine from the basement for the bartender, not getting more ice for the bartender, not getting more tortillas she was what needed it in that moment.
But you said something very interesting that I think is really important to note, is that evolution happens. I mean, I lived for years at USHG where you have the real old timers that are like, I remember when Danny worked the floor at Union Square Cafe. And that was obviously a really special time. And it can't always be that way because things evolve, right? But the key that you said that I think is really important is that the goal and the hope is that you train your team to be an extension of you.
And the embodiment of ownership.
The embodiment. Danny, I remember the greatest compliment we used to get, and this was, when we had like 7, 8, 9, 10 restaurants, and people would come in and they'd be like, "Oh my God, it's so great. Does Danny Meyer do all the hiring?" And obviously that's not possible. No, he can't, because you're dealing with,
thousands.
Yes.
Thousands at that point of employees.
I read that at the beginning of COVID, they had to lay off 3,000 employees or something.
I mean, when I left USHG, I was overseeing probably somewhere in the range of 500 employees just under my watch of the businesses that I ran. So it was thousands. But in a way, Danny did do all the hiring because he hired the individuals that now do the hiring, and so it really is important because, look, we can all agree that this is it's a hard business and it demands a lot out of you. And it is particularly difficult on individuals that have families. Restaurants are great when you're single,
young and single. You're good to go.
And you can, be out until 3 a.m. every night and sleep in. But it's not great when you've got a wife and kids and responsibility on that level. And so I feel that pain that when people are like, God, it's not the same. Josh used to hang out with us. But it's evolution. But the key is, how do you train your team
to keep it
take
feeling
that
the same
baton
way.
and keep it feeling the same way and carrying the essence of your hospitality even when you're not there.
Rafa, did I tell the story about the massage guy yet on the podcast?
You have, but why not again?
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I don't think you guys have heard.
I'll do it quickly.
I don't think I've heard the massage guy.
Because this wraps our topic that we're on right now. Rafa and I had just finished doing a little pop-up. I was walking him to his car, and some guy comes running out to me in the parking lot. I was like, "Excuse me, are you the owner?" I said, and I was defeated for who knows what reason was that day. I said,
multitude of
Who's asking?
Yes.
Who's asking?
Yes. And he said, I just wanted to let you know we were just driving by, and so my wife and I stopped in. And Jeff, who is my host, who has never worked in a restaurant before until May 25th of this year when he came on at Cantina, Jeff was fantastic, took such great care of us, made us feel so special. And he told me everything that I need to know about you.
Oh,
Wow.
He was like, I know you. I completely know you.
that's awesome.
And then he recommended I read a book called Culture. And he was like, it's a great book. I just finished reading it. You're going to love it. In fact, this restaurateur in New York, Danny somebody, worked on the book with them. And you should check it out. And so that was a moment of, there are highs and there are lows. And that was definitely a high moment of first of all, props to the staff because they got it. And that makes me so happy. And nothing makes me happier than seeing happy employees and happy customers getting the proper experience that isn't about me. It isn't about Emily. It isn't about the food. It isn't about this. It's about the feeling. And so we should all hope that can be continued.
Absolutely.
So with this attention to detail and such care that you guys clearly have soaked up and are now pouring out of yourselves, I want to know, how do you deal with, in your business and also from your experience in restaurants, the negative beyond just the weird Yelp guy or whatnot, but really, let's put aside the what can we learn from it, and truly, because I had dinner at Cantina this evening with Emily and Jasper right before we came down here, and I'm looking around and the sun is out and it's beautiful and the food was awesome and I was so happy, and I was like, you know what, love it or don't, love it or don't, because this feels so right to me. I feel like this is nailing it. Could I have made a couple of tweaks or would I give some suggestions? Sure. But I was so happy with my experience, with the quality, with the food, everything.
Yeah.
And I just want to know, where do you draw the line and how do you deal with when people are not getting your vision?
Before you go there, earlier you said, because I want your I want your review, I want your opinion. Before you start talking about it, I think that we share our opinions way too much these days. And I think our opinions matter way too much these days. But it goes back to what I was saying about human beings want to be seen and heard and validated in some way. And the days of a, say, food critic or restaurant reviewer or hotel reviewer are gone, and everyone who has a computer is now a reviewer and has the ability to go, I feel this way. And we have been incredibly fortunate to have amazing guests who feel really good.
Yeah.
But
So I will say this. How do I say this? I'm hypersensitive to, like, I want everything to be perfect. I am definitely, she always tells me regularly, calm down, relax. But I want it to be excellent. I want to be perfect. I want to be the best at what I do. And so I have that real competitive streak in me. And, I think for me, we are very fortunate because the massive majority of all of our guests get what we do, love what we do. And I would say overwhelmingly, we have just guests. It's a love fest. I love our guests. They love what we do, and it just works out great. And I would say it's 80% is that intense. And then there's another 19% that's fine, great.
fine.
They're wonderful. They're and then there's that small little amount. And I think the thing that my pet peeve is guests that treat Granville House as a transactional experience, because to me a bed and breakfast is very different. It's very personal.
Mm-hmm.
You're staying in my home,
Yeah.
right? And
Your mansion.
Yeah, my mansion that I can otherwise never afford. But it is you're sleeping under my roof, and so it is a very personal experience. And I think for the most part, most people that stay in a bed and breakfast, they get that, and they understand the nuance and the cadence of a bed and breakfast. And I'm not trying to suggest that I want to be your BFF every guest that comes in,
So what you doing?
but
What you
there's
doing?
something about that personal experience. And I think the thing that bothers me the most is, and it's very rare, doesn't happen often, but when it does, when someone is what I call dismissively transactional, where they don't give a shit. They just are looking for just cut it out. Send me to where's my room and leave me alone. I don't want to even talk to you. And
I'm a waitress at the
those
table.
are the situations
I'm
that
not the
kind
owner
of
the
get
house.
under
I'm
my
just-
skin.
yeah,
And it's
that
not a
kind of-
power thing where
No.
I'm the owner. It's just you're not getting what we're doing,
Yeah.
So those are the moments that get under my skin. But I think to directly answer your question, we've been very, very lucky. We've been very fortunate to have very positive reviews, right? Our reviews, whether it's through booking.com or Google or Yelp or whatever, have all been very positive. Yelp is an interesting one because I know that you guys have discussed Yelp on the previous podcast, and I will say this. I don't like Yelp, and we don't have many reviews on Yelp. I want to say it's less than 10, and they're all perfect. 5 out of 5 or 10 out of 10, I don't know. But the Yelp people reach out and they're like, "Hey, this is so and so from Yelp. I noticed you've never claimed your business before, and da 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 da. And let's work together and how we can get more traction." And I just don't return the calls because, I know Yelp exists, and I know that Yelp people are gonna leave reviews on Yelp, and that's
Just
fine.
by saying the word Yelp
By
over and over,
yeah,
you're promoting it.
but I refuse to claim our Yelp
Me too.
account.
I
I won't do it.
I haven't
because
claimed
I
it.
don't want to do it, and they keep reaching out, and I just refuse. They've reached out 20 times, and I don't return their calls because I'm like, I don't like Yelp. I don't like what you stand for, and so I won't play ball with you. But to the question of reviews, we got our first bomb review. What? Yeah, I'm gonna go
we're
there.
gonna go there.
We had our first
Shh, Terry.
bomb review, and it was a
Only
Google
bad
review.
review.
And I don't know how many, but we have 50 Google reviews, and I think it's 5 stars. And 49 of them, I'm paraphrasing, but 49 of them are 5 stars, and then we got a 1 star, and they can't give 0. It's either they won't allow that, and it was funny because I braced myself. I kept saying once we open, I'm like, I know it's going to kill me when we get a really shitty review, because I have a thin skin that way, because I really, as
Care.
much as I say I don't give a shit, but I do
It's so
care. I care a
personal.
lot,
It's so
and
personal.
I would be more bummed if someone gave us a 3 and said they weren't that warm and the breakfast was mediocre. That would fucking devastate me. Like, I would probably like lose sleep for 3 nights over it.
Yeah.
But this review was just the silliest review in the world. And what was funny was it came like 18 months after the experience, which was, we had a couple that was, they were on their honeymoon, and they were there for like 5 or 6 nights. And they were a young couple, and seemed nice enough. If they're listening, you were nice enough. I don't think they're listening. But basically, the first morning, you know, and you've been to the house. It's a house. It's not a massive hotel, and there's not concrete walls in between and whatnot. And we're in the Berkshires, where cannabis is completely legal, and great. Go nuts. But it is a non-smoking
property.
house
Yeah.
where you can't light up a joint in your room. And that morning, like, I'm sitting there cleaning rooms, and the entire house
Our teenager was the one who was like, "Mom, it smells like pot."
reeked of
Like,
weed.
yeah, it does.
And like, it just permeated the entire house. Like, it was not just sequestered to their room. And so we knocked on the door, and we said, "Hey, I'm so sorry. I get it. We're in Massachusetts. Go nuts, but you can't smoke inside your room. It's smelling up the whole house." "Oh, okay, all right." And then like an hour and a half later, the same thing. And so we had to knock again and be like, "Yo, what is, like, I'm not sure what you didn't understand the first time, but this, you know, you can't smoke in your room. It's a non-smoking. It is literally affecting the entire house." And they're like, "Okay, fine. Well, it's medical." And I was like, "Okay, that's fine, but you
Outside.
still can't smoke in your room." And so they left and left for the day. And then they texted me later, and they were like, "Hey, this might not work out for us. If we just like pack up and leave, would you give us our deposit back?" And I said, "Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Let's do that." And
Win-win.
so that was it. Win-win. We lost out on, you know, whatever for the stay, but it was what it was. And then 18 months later, out of the woodwork, and I remember the
scathing
husband. It was funny
review.
because we went back and forth, and he said, "Would you give us our deposit back if we just said if we left?"
Yeah.
And I said, "No problem, all good." And he said, "Great, no." And his exact words, "No hard feelings." I said, "No hard feelings."
There were other issues. That was
Yeah,
the
but
the biggest part.
the others.
But there were others.
But anyway, 18 months later, they left this scathing review. But the weirdest thing about the review was, they wrote the story without naming
No
the
context.
elephant in the room. They were like, you know,
They said I was
this
lurking
place,
around the
they
halls.
lurk under the they lurk around the halls
came to
and
your
play,
door 'cause
you know,
it
and
stank.
treat you like children. And like, you know, and reprimand you and da 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 da, and they lurk around, and I'm like, and so I read it and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. So I took great pride. I typically do not respond to reviews, and I probably should. Because I think a responsible business owner, even with a good review, says, "Thanks so much." I don't have time, and I haven't been able to do that. But this
cleaning
was
rooms.
this was the room. This was the review where I said, "I'm going to respond to this one."
Yeah.
And if you go on our Google page and read our reviews, I felt very positive about my response.
I can't
which
wait
was,
to see how you wrote this out.
Like, I don't even understand where you're coming from,
Yeah.
but let me tell you my side of
He
the
needed
story.
he needed many hours to
Yeah.
calm down
Yeah.
before he wrote it out.
But it's funny because a lot of guests have since come and they were like, "Yeah, we read that review," and they're like, "I'm like, you did?" And they're like, "What a bunch of nonsense!"
Yeah.
And so, to me, like, that was the one example where I think if you read the reviews and then read that review, you're like, okay,
Yeah.
this was a particular guest.
I want to go back, and that's recording.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they'll ever see it. What happened? Earlier I said people want to be seen and heard. What what did they need from us? What I don't understand. I still don't understand. It's a challenge to me to understand people
Yeah.
and see. I don't understand how a year and a half later something happened.
That's the thing that kills
spurred
me.
a thought that said, I need to do this, and I need to put this in writing and put it out there into the universe so that other people can see it. And I need this.
What
I need
mood
to,
was she
I
in a
need
year
to
and a half
say
later?
this
Yeah.
Say, I'm going to
about
write
this place.
now.
But it's interesting because to go back to
Her
we
husband
share-
probably yelled at her for smoking pot in her bedroom in
I don't
Brooklyn.
know. And like,
Honey!
it's-
So all that to say, tread lightly with reviews. We have this power to say, I think this about something, and I think that about this place, and you were in a bad mood, or you just had an argument with your spouse, and it wasn't the restaurant or the hotel or the place that you're putting a review on, but that 1 star or that whatever just took our 5 to a 4.9
Oof.
yeah.
or 4.8.
That hurts.
Or whatever it is.
It pisses
and
me
we're
off.
super duper lucky that we keep getting great stuff. Those things matter.
Yeah.
And people just put their venom out into the
Yeah.
world, and it's like, what do you need? Can I hug you? Can I come hug you?
Gross.
What is it that it's like, I'm going to get this
Yeah.
meanness out? I don't know.
All right, here's the next one, which has been like a topic that I've been talking to a lot of people about, and I think you guys are a great group to ask the question to. And Rafa, please feel free to chime in on this conversation because we haven't discussed this yet. But I want to discuss pricing because you guys are truly educated diners, right? You've been on both sides of the table, no pun intended. You're now part of this community in the business community, but avid supporters of so many restaurants and other businesses, and I know this. So much so that you guys threw a hospitality Christmas party last year, which was fucking awesome. And like, what a cool thing to do. Prices are high right now on everything. And it really upsets me when people come to me and be like, oh, I just tried this, but like, it's too expensive. It's too expensive. And I'm curious to know from your vantage point, having seen, an old school world of restaurants where we weren't in this like super, super heightened. And I'm talking not just 5 years ago, but 10, 20 years ago, and how it's changed. And what is your personal kind of perception of looking at a menu? Does price play a role in how you actually judge, or judge is the wrong word, but how you enjoy something is, and what, where are your feelings and threshold as far as pricing in restaurants for food and beverage right now?
So I'll start with that in that, and I'll talk about restaurants, but I'll also relate it to what we do. To me, there's a difference between price and value. What's the value? Because anything, right? You can have a hamburger, right? And you can get a hamburger at McDonald's
On the dollar menu.
or you can get a hamburger at Prairie Whale or, a gazillion other places. But I think for me, I always look for what's the value proposition and what am I getting for that price. And it's not just the hamburger, but it's the overall experience, And so it's a loaded question also to ask because I've been on the inside and I know how hard it is to run restaurants. I know how expensive it is to run restaurants. I know that, people think that as a restaurateur, you're like you have a money tree in your backyard, and that is the furthest thing from the truth. And I know the challenge of trying to, it drives me crazy when you hear people, say about like, the disparity between front of house and the back. Well, just pay them more. Well, it's just not that easy, I mean, I know Danny obviously tried
Hospitality included.
valiantly with hospitality included, and it was really difficult. It was really difficult to be at the at the front end of the front of that, trying to manage that and deal with it. But it's running a restaurant, it's gotten more. Everything has gotten more expensive. Food costs have gotten more expensive. Rents have gotten more expensive. Technology adds to things that never existed back in the 80s, that now it's like there's so many additional expenses. So I get it. For me, what I always look at is just what's the value perception, and to tie it back to what we do at Granville House, like I know that, one of the things that I learned from Danny is how do you create value, right? Because Danny never wanted to be the most expensive restaurant. Gramercy Tavern back in the day when we were there was an amazing restaurant because it was trying to, it was on the level of the Danielle's and the Jean-Georges and the Persées and whatnot. And those are all 4-star restaurants. And Gramercy was a 3-star restaurant, and I think intentionally because he wanted it to be comfortable and he wanted it to be approachable. Thank you. Yeah. That's the more appropriate word. And when we created our pricing for Granville House, I very much had Danny sort of on my shoulder, sort of whispering in my ear, where's the value perception? Make sure. Because make no mistake, I know we're not cheap. Staying at Granville House, you can easily stay somewhere else in the Berkshires, Southern Berkshires, or even Great Barrington and pay less. But I wanted to take sort of like compare us to the more classic bed and breakfast, the old schools, and say, okay, if they're priced here, let's put ourselves here, which is just a bit above, but how do we add a value perception, whether it be with a handcrafted chocolate bar that Doria makes, or a complimentary pour of bourbon that we offer to all of our guests during their stay. And even though the room is not, we're never going to be the $125 a night place, that you could find elsewhere. We want to be comfortable in our pricing, but have guests leave saying, that felt worth it.
Yeah.
That felt worth it. That whole, the overall experience of a really lovingly made olive oil muffin in the morning and a fresh breakfast and that bourbon pour and that all those little details all added up, and I left there saying that was worth my money, And not everyone agrees with that. There's still people that put value as, a 7 on our reviews.
But that's hard to force on somebody. You're kind of taking a leap of faith too, and hoping, do they recognize it? Do they appreciate it? And I'm in the same boat so often. Like, what are the things? And oftentimes I always look back to, all right, if you go to a Broadway show, all right, what's that going to cost? If you go to a movie, what's that going to cost?
That's right.
Right. So those are things that have relatively fixed prices. I mean, obviously, you go to see Hamilton, it's going to cost you $1,000 for a ticket, and you go to see some other, the Lion King's probably expensive too, but some of the off-Broadway knickknacks, you can get for cheaper. But I'm always considering that too, and it just frustrates me that people just immediately resort to, that's more than I expected to pay, and I feel like it can ruin an experience. Yeah. I mean, you guys are a little different because people are paying fully up front, right? So like they make the choice before.
Yeah, the number is there.
But in restaurants, they're already there. They've sat down. If they were smart and they did their homework, they might check out a menu online.
Yeah.
Not look at the Google how many dollar signs are next to it, but like check out the menu and be like, all right, yeah, like this will work for us, as opposed to sitting down and be like, this is your offerings and these are your prices.
Yeah.
But sometimes there are things that are out of my budget. I love sushi, and a friend of mine does these sushi dinners from time to time, and we ball out, and it's a ton of fucking money, but it's totally worth it. And this time he was doing it, coming around, it was $550 a head, which is a lot for dinner.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. But I don't consider that a meal. I
That's an
consider that an
experience.
experience.
Yeah.
And I would,
And they're priceless.
And again, I paid $850 for Hamilton tickets, and I would happily pay $550 for 4 hours of eating some of the most incredible sushi
That's
right.
ever.
It's not just what's going in here.
No.
It's so much more.
But this time around, I was like, you know what? Today is not the day to spend $550 on
Right.
sushi.
Yeah.
For me, and then another $550 for my son, who's my date, and anything weird and expensive that I like to do. It's just, and when people, I got a review recently, somebody, again, lying, just being like, this place has the audacity to put a 35% additional service fee so that they can pay their staff more.
Yeah.
And this woke establishment, and I was like, all right, well, first of all, it's not 35%. So you're just like, you're going out of
Just
your mind.
making stuff up.
And just to complain so hard about that, he even went into details about like, oh yeah, so, and you went ahead and put an additional tip line there. Like, you're going to ask me for more of my hard-earned money for this meal. And my feeling to that kind of person is, look, I can't eat out every single night. And truthfully, if I don't have the ability to tip 25% at the coffee shop, at the bakery, at a restaurant, wherever it is, then I shouldn't be there in that moment. Like that, if it's not a good week, it's not a good week. Right?
Yeah.
But it's hard to set people up with that, and that was kind of a premise of this entire podcast of like, can we create a little bit more awareness? Can we create a little bit more of a conversation to ask the questions, whether it's to ownership at a better time, not in the middle of service, but sending an email being like, I'm curious, like, what is this 22% model that you're doing, and how has that helped your business? Because I've never seen it before, and it's uncomfortable for me, and I wasn't quite sure what to do. Yes, we can have that conversation. But without the conversations, without bringing these topics up, I still feel like customers are just like, it's expensive. It's expensive. Which frustrates me because everything's expensive. Do people decide, you know what, I'm going to complain about the price of wood? No, they decide, you know what, I'm not building my house this year.
Yeah.
It's not happening.
Yeah.
I'm not spending $90 for a 2x4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But food is something that food has always been too cheap.
Yeah.
Right? We've abused labor
because
for
it's
so
a basic
long.
human right
It's
to eat food.
It is.
And so we feel we deserve food. And I should be able to go to a restaurant and get food. And I recognize that there are restaurants in the world that I cannot go to because they are way too expensive. And I think that we want experiences and we want to go and have that great food. And to your point, the onus is on us to know, what am I willing to say is, where is it worth it to me? Because sometimes it's not even what you're eating, it's how you're eating it. And if you are not truly enjoying your meal because you think it's too expensive, then you're stressing out over the lamb or the lobster, and you're not enjoying the lamb and the lobster and the beautiful things that are out there. I mean, go to the grocery store and you can buy eggs for X dollars and X dollars, and the quality is going to be somewhere in there, and you can go
Eggs
and
are
get
great.
all organic, beautiful vegetables. I mean, we're in the food opposite of the food desert is where we live, the food paradise that we live in, and the accessibility that we have to incredible food. Go to the farmer's market, you're going to pay more money for better food than you would if you went to Price Chopper. A tomato is not a tomato, you know.
Yeah.
So it's the consciousness of making that choice, and it's up to the guest to say, you know, this is what's of value to me. So it's hard in the position, especially that you're in, where people are like, well, that I feel like that wasn't worth it, because they don't see here's the item, and this is everything it cost to get this item to your plate.
Yeah. I had dinner with some customer friends of mine, and they just got back from a place like up in the Canadian islands near the Faroe Islands. I forget exactly what island it is, but some woman went ahead and essentially bought the island, and all the locals that live there, like small island.
Bought the island and the locals that live there?
Yeah, kind of. But she built this big hotel. And the premise of the hotel was, I want the hotel to be the economy that helps get the people of this island to a better place.
Okay.
And written on every single menu and every single bill, it went into details where that money was going.
Oh, wow.
It really broke it down for you because that was part of the experience. You're supposed to leave there getting the full picture. And there were tours from the hotel to go see the textile place and to go see the fishermen at the pier and everything else. And it really broke it down. And they said it was eye-opening to get that kind of awareness, of understanding of why.
Yeah.
For me, it's always about people, right? Like if a farmer tells me my pork is $7 a pound, I don't feel like he's price gouging me. I may know that another guy is selling it at $5 a pound, and I can make that choice for sure. And
Right.
same thing with vegetables.
Right.
But I look beyond just is the product better, and I think about the people. You know, we work with people all day long. I mean, you guys work with each other, but I work with a lot of people, and I get to enjoy a lot of people, and their tomatoes are expensive too.
Yeah.
And so I just think like we need to have a better threshold and understanding that nobody's getting ripped off right now. And if you are, shame on that business.
Yeah.
But the price does not reflect just the food that goes into it. It reflects the people that worked hard.
Yeah.
In the last 2 weeks, it's been 140 degrees in the kitchen. Somebody yesterday said they did a temperature check in the UPS van when the guy hopped out of the back, and it was 160 degrees back there.
Oh, Jesus.
It's hot, and I'm looking at my employees as they're sweeping the floor, just thinking, should we close? Like, is this too hot? Like, is this like a heat wave? Like, we're closing. But then I think, you think the farmers are closing?
Yeah.
You think the guys that have been putting off have had so many contractor jobs that they're finally getting to something? You think they're calling their clients to be like, hey, we're not going to work this week. It's too hot. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's when as we've been having this conversation, you said something that I think really resonated, which is we are fortunate in that you're right. People, when they book, they sign on the dotted line. They know what we cost. You're an interesting enigma because, I should say, Cantina, in that, you know, people show up probably sometimes having not done any research because it's like the hot Berkshire's
Yeah, I heard this place was
restaurant.
good.
I heard this place is good. Let's go. Let's book. And it also is an interesting place because it's sort of this really interesting balance of casual but like
Relaxed,
really
fine.
phenomenal fine dining. And so I can see where people might show up and say, huh? But what I would say to that is you have to keep doing what you do because this area needs places like that. I've often said about Cantina, it's a really it's hard to put in a box. It's hard. People are like,
It's
how
a
do you
good thing.
describe it? And I'm like, it's really hard to say because it's really difficult to encapsulate what you guys do. And I was there, what was it, 2-3 weeks ago we had dinner there with Jane. I've spent my entire life working in fine dining restaurants, and I'm challenged by that menu in a good way. I don't mean that in a bad way, in a good way. It keeps me on my toes. And I love that a place like this that
Ingredients.
we live in.
I don't know what this is. What is this?
And
Educate
I
me.
love it. I'm
I
like,
love that.
I want it because whatever it is, I want it. I want to try something new. And so, like, that to me, I feel the same way. We've often joked that I feel the same way when we go to Prairie Well. I'll look at Prairie Well's menu, and a lot of times I'll glance over the first courses, and I'm like, I don't know if there's anything, and then I'll just say, fuck it, let's just order 3 or 4, and every time
Always good.
I love it. Like, and I'm just like, oh my God, this is so damn good. And so I just feel like restaurants, like we need restaurants like that challenge and are not just fastballs down the middle, but are places that are trying new things and really trying to appeal to a more, and I don't want to sound snobby by saying a more sophisticated palate, but more adventurous people that want to just try new things and celebrate food and be turned on to new experiences.
I think that in some ways, fine dining, and not just fine dining, but I'm going to say something new. Different dining. I don't know where I'm trying to go there with that. You can go to a steakhouse, get your steak. You can go get your salad, get your burger. There's food. I want my mac and cheese. I want my pizza. Here's the things. There are places that are creative with food, that are creating new things, that are saying, okay, what do we have fresh in the market today? Let's create. And that is art. And art is something that is very interesting when you try to put a price on it, because it is it's all suggestive, subjective. You might look at a piece of art and go, that's shit. And I'd never pay anything for it. And the art person says, well, it's worth $3 million. And you go, well, I think it's shit, but it's worth $3 million. It is subjective. There are places, and yours is one of them, with food that is, you're creating something that's different. So it's not just sustenance. Your guests are not going there just to fill their bellies. There is an experience that's going to be had in the atmosphere that you've created. There's an experience that's going to be had with the staff that you've cultivated. And there's an experience that's going to be had with the food and the wine and the beverages and the dessert. All of it is an experience. It's an artistic experience.
Yeah, Pete, one of my longest servers, mentioned the other day, he was like, what if we scratched menu prices and we actually just charged by the hour for service? He was like,
there's a weird, interesting concept.
He was like,
Shout out to Pete.
shout out to Pete, like, what if you rolled in there and it was like, cool, like, who's going to be your server? You got the $150 an hour server. You got the, the $50 an hour server. It's like,
where does Pete land in that?
Right now, Pete's at $150 an hour.
Pete's top tier.
Pete's top tier.
He's a good-looking man.
He brings the heat.
Yeah.
Good
I want Pete.
man.
Yeah. And you know what? When those bachelor parties come in, they would happily buy out the other tables that already paid for Pete just to go ahead and book him at a higher rate too.
There you go.
This is
But
like Danny Meyer 2.0
I like it.
concept
I like
here
it.
right now.
Sure.
It's just a slight tweak of like where you're looking at and everything else. And like you guys said, it's not about the transaction to me. I want to
So
take
not-
the credit
yeah.
card out of it. And
Yeah.
truthfully, if it was a matter of like how hard you squeeze somebody with your hug is the tip.
Yeah.
Like that would be awesome,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we'd have a lot of people with broken ribs, I'm sure, at the end of it.
If we could pay with our feelings.
If we could pay with our feelings,
it would
like
be
we absolutely
wonderful.
would,
It would be so
love that.
wonderful. Yeah.
I love that.
Well, prices are high. We know that, but one thing is for sure: if you are not in the Berkshires and want to come stay in the Berkshires, these two in their home are worth every single penny. And if you are in the Berkshires and you have friends coming to town, I couldn't think of a better place for them to stay. Terry and
take good care
Terri,
of
thank
them.
you so much for coming and hanging out with us.
Thank you.
You guys are awesome.
It's
and
such a pleasure to be here.
Keep doing it. We missed a bunch of stuff that I still want to talk about, but we'll have you guys back.
Yeah.
We would
sounds
love
good.
it. Anytime.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Can we quickly hear where we can find you guys? Where can someone find you guys?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Bookings and everything else. social
yeah,
media,
so,
whatever you want to promote.
We are, you can find us at granvillehouseinn.com. And we are at 98 Division Street in Great Barrington. And I don't even know. I think our Instagram is Granville House GB.
Yeah.
And look us up. Come give us a visit. And we would love to have you stay with us if you're in the area. So please give us a holler.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys, for coming.
Thank
and
you.
reminding everybody that we're on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Google Play and all the good places out there to listen to podcasts, and YouTube as well. Give us a follow on Instagram. Please leave us a nice review Not one of those 1-star ones.
No way.
No, none of that.
Yeah, if you have an issue with us, send me an email. What's our email? What is
Or
it?
come over on the podcast and we'll tell you.
Yeah,
tell us
even
to
better.
our face.
Yeah, even better. I think it's podcast@bunchfeedback.com, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
That's
you
our
can email
email.
us. If you have any ideas and stuff you want to talk about, if you want to be on the podcast and don't have the cojones to say it, like Terry here, send us an email. We'd love to have you on. Definitely, interact with us on social media because we got a lot more of these to go and we want to keep talking with great people. So, Bunch World, good night.